Alright, yeah. My teachers always told me I'd never amount to nothing, and they may have been right. That's why I jump on the mic every night. 'Cause when I jump on the mic, that's how I know that I'ma be alright. Well, I'ma be alright.
How did I get?
We've talked about previous episodes. The attention span's a big one. I mean, you're getting all this stimulus across the world, and then all this stimulus across platforms, and all this comparison across platforms. I mean, it must be brutal. I used to think for the students, it was just a matter of willpower. And then I listened to someone talking about it. I'm like,
No.
yeah, but back in our day, we didn't have phones really, didn't have access to the internet as much. So it's not just in school now, the bullying. Like students, it can happen any time.
So
And it just seems like around the clock they're getting exposed to this.
I was talking to my child about this the other day. So they wanted a phone, they wanted to get, all the social media and things. I'm like, no. One, you're too young, but two, I don't want, after school, I want you to come home, do your sports, unwind. You don't need to be bombarded and have been held hostage by your phone because someone messaged you and they need an instant reply back. That's not how communication works.
Yeah.
Like when we were in high school, let's just say you and I got in a fight at school, yeah? And you punched me, I punched you, and I called you this and you called me that, and that was it. And then we'd see each other the next day at school, and most of the time would be, you know what, man? Cool, whatever, we're both idiots. But now, if I lost that fight, I'd be bombarding you with mean messages, saying this, doing whatever, and then getting all my friends to do, and then you would do the same, and then it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, you're getting messages like...
So cyberbullying outside of school is the hardest one to deal with, and because it's not during school, like it's how do you handle it?
Yeah.
And you're trying to be supportive with it, but it's just another thing that's just been thrown into schools.
Yeah.
And they'll hold on, like what's the approach on this from above? Like what's going on? But it's, like I always thought it's just, like just as kid turned off, but it's just the constant need to know, and then the constant what am I, the fear of missing out.
And they're brutal. Addicted to them, like they're I doom scroll. I'm no different. I waste more time than I probably should on my phone, but the content that I look at is, I guess, more tailored to me because I'll click, don't recommend this video, don't do this, I don't like that, so I don't get all of that stuff. I could just scroll up, but I'll rather do it so it doesn't come back in. And then I'll go to school. But my feed, no one's arguing me on my feed. No one's arguing me, telling me that I'm old or I've got a big fat grey head or whatever, anything like that, whatever it is.
We're not obsessed with chasing likes and stuff
as
well.
So then you go into classrooms and they might, this poor kid that you're looking at, whose behaviour is all over the shop, they may have been just a victim of online bullying for the last 4 days.
Yeah.
Just constant bombardment because they didn't have the new shoes or whatever, some crazy, meaningless issue.
Yeah, it's blown out of proportion.
But then that child then gets upset. Then they will snap because everyone can only take so much. And then they might get expelled, they might get excluded. And then the cycle just keeps on going. I think
the other thing as well is all the disinformation, all the different views of being spread as well. Like, so at least, I didn't get, so Facebook was the first one around when I was with social media. I didn't get that to 23, 24. I didn't have a heap of intelligence, but I had enough to go, you could question stuff. Whereas, but if you're 10, 11, whatever years old, young, and you've got some pretty convincing stuff being said, you don't know how to fact check it, or you do fact check it, and then that's sort of agreeing with that person. You're like, you're constantly questioning, we're constantly questioning stuff, which I think's been, a big reason for mental health these days with students.
It's so some of the kids I work with, they're literally addicted to their phones. Now, we're working with them, trying to get them off their phones and trying to get them to build some boredom tolerance and all those type of things. But at the end of the day, they've had these phones in their hand for 5, 6, 7 years. They know
10 hours a day.
And it affects their sleep.
Yeah.
It affects their friendships. It affects their relationships. It affects everything.
Yeah.
And then you come to school the next day and you look at this kid who's naughty, but they probably haven't slept for more than 4 hours for the last month.
Yeah.
because they're constantly on their phone being bombarded with information, be it positive or negative, they're just constantly looking, and it rewires your brain. You're constantly seeking that. So
that's
then
the key.
you go into class and all of these kids look like their behaviour is, these kids their behaviour is terrible. They don't listen, but they don't have the ability to, because they're so used to a loud headline, and then, or someone who's, got sparkling lights, and then they're going to look at you and go,
all the stimulation. Yeah, I mean, so I think, so during school, so the school term, I probably do, I think my screen time is 2.5 hours a day. During the holidays, it can sneak up to 4 hours. I feel it at 4 hours, I really do. I feel my brain changing. And I feel my mood, my attitude changing as well. I was talking to a year 12 student a couple of years back, and she was averaging like 10 to 12 hours of screen time a day. And she was still she was doing stuff outside of school as well. And was pretty capable. I'm like 10 to 12. And then most of the information you're digesting is in 10, 20-second minute intervals. I'm like, if you're doing that for 10 hours, I'm like, good luck to you.
But your brain would just be overloaded.
Absolutely.
Overloaded. And then, again, you're in class and your brain's constantly bombarded with stuff. And then you've got someone trying to do something. You know what? I'm out. This is done. I'm not going to do it. Then the behaviour starts, because it's not because you don't want to do the work. It's because your brain just can't take any more information.
Yeah.
Like, you can only do so much.
Yeah, and then I'd imagine you look at the social influencer side of stuff for teenagers, and you got these young people going around with all this attitude, and you're like, but that's where society's going wrong, is they're giving more props to these idiots. And then suddenly, everyday working people like us teachers trying to do right by society just get looked over.
And you also look at the things that some of these people, these influencers or whatever on TV, on their phones, that's how old I am. But they're all actually quite harmful, and they're quite negative behaviours, like going around and, trying to intimidate someone, or, I'm going to go get in a smash. Why? Why do you want to get in a fight?
I remember what stood out for me a year or two ago, the place we train at, there was the TV, and there's a couple of kids just sitting around watching stuff on TV, harmless. And I was watching like the YouTube, and there was this 19, 20-year-old guy walking around with 2 massive security guards around him, just yelling abuse at people in public. And when that person came up, he let the security guards deal with it. I was like, that's how weak society is these days. And you got these not poor, but these 10-year-olds thinking it's cool. And you're like, you're a 19-year-old, and your whole audience is 10 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
I think so probably the angle with that first point is, it's not just, behaviours go hard, but society is changing more.
So much.
Next time, Matthew, you're like this, respect and authority feel different.
Yes,
where does that start from outside the classroom?
Well, I guess, like the
parents?
Yeah.
I think
pretty much so. Like, if you look at, you need to respect me, I'm your parent. Well, I kind of get it, I do agree with it, but then respect's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. It's not, you give me respect. You sort of need to earn it, even if you're an adult and you're a teacher or you're a parent. It's still, you need to be reciprocal.
So what's number 1 or 2 traits that builds respect? Trust?
Number 1, trust, but also
leading by example.
What's humility? Just you know what?
I'm a genuine person.
Yeah, my bad. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Or I shouldn't have asked you to do that. I knew you're at capacity, or however you want to say it. But just owning up to the fact that you're also a human. Yeah. That's how you're going to get. Yep. More bang for your buck, as they say.
We're talking about off air earlier. I still think there's a lot of schools are set up for students to comply with as well. I mean, we've talked about. I find it hard, and you're the same, that just complying for the sake of complying, not really how. So there's probably a reason we work better with those difficult kids, because we understand that everyone's different. Need to comply.
And we were sort of those kids as well.
Yeah, but I find that that's happening less these days, and maybe so. I look at teachers that might have been around 20, 30 years, where they're sort of old school teachers, where I'm the teacher in front of the class, you must listen. Students are going through and going, well, not necessarily. Now that's not necessarily good or bad, but it's definitely, there's less compliance from students these days, I feel.
But they also don't have to. There's no real authority, I guess you could say. There's no consequences for their actions. There's no any of that stuff. So you look at that guy that you was walking around yelling abuse at people. If he yelled at me and I hit him, I'm the one that gets in trouble, even though he's the one antagonising, going at, because of what? You know, like there's no repercussions for these actions anymore.
Yeah.
Which is why some of the kids' behaviour in class against those authoritarian teachers, it's wild, because they know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can't do anything. They say some of these kids, they say horrible things, and there's no
repercussions for
none,
it.
because they're not taught that, you know, like authority. It's a bad word. I'm not a big fan of it, but like it has to be the boss. Someone has to be in charge. Someone has to have authority in something. So you need to learn that, you know what, they're the boss. They have the authority. I've just got to do it. But doing that also, they need to respect you. So I look at some of the bosses I've had. The bosses that I work the best for are the ones that I respect more.
Yeah.
I understand they're my boss, and I will still do what they ask me to do, because that's their position. They're in that authority position, so I will follow. But if I like them and respect them, I'll do way more, because that's how relationships work.
Yeah, and even when I was coming through a student, especially in high school, the teachers, and it wasn't many, but the teachers I got along with, is they didn't just come in and assume authority. Like they built that respect up with me as a student, and I learned to respect it
at home, unfortunately. And the bad thing about saying that is, some homes are
nasty places.
Yeah, and you know, you wouldn't wish these things on people you can't stand, and that's the lives that these kids live in and out, and you know a fraction of it. But
that's the other thing that people that don't teach don't get, is it's not just teaching the curriculum side of stuff. Like, you're exposed to all the other stuff most of the time that's happening outside with the student. There's a lot of dark stuff out there.
Yeah, and you know, like, but also that, and if that student is in school and that's their safe place, they're going to act up, because there's no consequences. They're not going to have, you know, all of those negative things that happens to them at home happen at school. So they're going to boundary test. They're going to push, because what's the point? Everyone hates me anyway, so I might as well just keep going. So that's when it comes down to, you need to have authority in your classroom. They need to know that you're the teacher. Absolutely. But they also need to know that you're a respectful human. You're a nice human. You understand. And that's how you get that, not authoritarian approach is a very wrong word, but that's how you get them to listen and follow and, you know, do those things, because they trust you.
Yeah. And so, I mean, behaviour management's definitely become, well, I think behaviour's become more complex. I don't necessarily agree with people saying it's gone crazy. I mean, I'm still applying behaviour strategies I used when I started teaching 20 years ago. You know, so I think the main thing when you're dealing with behaviour is to stay calm, you know, but I think teachers are now having to train themselves more. Well, you know, like, I think we've done stuff outside of school that requires you to stay calm and composed, you know, and you train that skill. Whereas other teachers aren't necessarily exposed to that or trained that. Whereas I think there's more of a need for it these days with dealing with behaviour, or more complex behaviour.
And this is where I think that unis need to do a bit more of a better job, because uni's all about, you know, yes, some unis do have behaviour management classes and things like that, but the majority of it is all about curriculum. But it's kind of easy to get your head around curriculum. If you teach one subject, that's your subject. You can't be able to figure it out. But the hardest part is teaching that one subject to all of those other kids that have varying levels of emotional need that unis don't prepare teachers for. So they think that, oh, you know what, I'm going to come out, I'm going to graduate, oh, I'm going to go in, I'm going to have pretty posters, and then you get in there and then the kid's like,
I'm not doing
Go
anything. Yeah, that's nicely.
And the teacher's like, oh, but, and they get in the flurry, they get into a power struggle, and then that student wins anyway. Or, they keep calm. They're like, okay, cool. What don't you like about the room? Maybe we can work together and we can change it. Build a bit of rapport, build a bit of trust, build a bit of respect, and it might change. Or they might rip it off the wall. Who knows?
Yeah. Look, and mind you, one thing that still grinds my gears when I'm teaching myself in the classroom is when you just get those constant misbehaviours and you got to sort of put them out all the time. And it feels like you're spending more time trying to de-escalate situations than just, sort of get through and set boundaries. And
that's where go on a bit of a tangent here, but that's where if you have a rapport with them and you understand them, you sort of know what that behaviour is trying to tell you. So if it's an attention-seeking behaviour, you can go, you know what, I'll call on them first, or I'll check in a little bit more. Or if it's a distraction, you know what, I'll just ignore it a little bit, and then I'll come and I'll check in and
So absolutely, but where it frustrates me is to say, I'm pretty, so term one, from day one, I'm doing it, and I'm applying all my behaviour processes, and then term three, you still get it, it's not as much, or the baby doesn't go for as long, but it's still there. And I think because you've been teaching so long as well, you know where the students can get. So you feel like I get frustrated myself. So I'm like, let's just get through all this stuff. It's almost like it's taking slower than I thought it would.
But that's also where you sort of need to go, look, mate, you know what? I get it. School's hard. These are all the things that I'm trying to help you. These are all the things I'm doing to try to help you. You need to meet me halfway. You need, there needs to be
accountability.
I can't do it all, mate. You know what? And if you're not going to meet me halfway, I'll keep trying. I'm going to keep doing these things, but it'll be a lot better for you in the long run. School will be easier. You might get a better job. You might find adult life a bit easier if you start to meet people halfway.
Yeah, and
that accountability part.
Yeah, and the other thing is, obviously, we work better with people when there's less stress around. The amount of stress in teaching these days is getting out of control. So you put that content on top of a teacher, and they go deal with a student or students that are hard work. It just feels that emotional labour is coming harder and harder.
So I looked at, we were talking about wasting time on phones before. So I've been following, he pops up on my feed all the time. Pretty funny guy. Let's treat pilots like teachers for a moment. So now you've got a plane full of people, and now you've got to take it off. But before you take off, you've got to check that all the seatbelts are on. And before you can check the seatbelts are on, you've got to check that everyone knows what a seatbelt is. And then you need to make sure that they know how to hold a seatbelt to put it in. But while you're doing that, you need to document it. You need to make sure that everyone's dietary needs are met as well, on top of, he just starts layering all this stuff on.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you said that about a pilot, people are like, that's not stupid. Why would they do that? That's what teachers do all the time.
And then give them a quarter of the pay of a pilot.
I'm not even that way. Maybe like a tenth.
Yeah, what was the other one I heard? There was a stand-up comedian said the round of applause at the end of a session that a comedian gets, imagine they gave that to teachers at the end of every lesson. If you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible. I remember it took me 10 years into my career. I was actually working at a school, whereas I'd finish the lessons and students would walk out and thank me for the lesson.
That's good.
I was like, what? How? Where's this been for 10 years?
That's why you got to teach pre-primary. So if you let them do a song, they'll be like, that's the best lesson ever.
You're my best teacher. You're my favourite teacher. Yeah, high school, you never get that.
So being a favourite teacher in pre-primary is it's kind of a backhanded compliment because I've only had two teachers, you and their kindy teacher, so it's only a 50% chance, isn't it?
Top of the top, mate. It's good to see. The next big point for behaviour is obviously technology as well. It's changed the classroom dynamic, attention spans are smaller, habits, some routines are different. Students' organisations these days is brutally bad.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But this is where teachers sort of need to, and admin and school leaders or whatever you want to call them, they sort of need to jump on the fact that yes, AI is a thing. Yes, phones are a thing. Yes, technology is being used way too much. Yes, kids still need to read books because they need to do. We need to change the way to do things because these kids have grown up with so much technology.
So much.
So
Just to
you
burst
think
it
about
up.
it. So I have 3 children, and none of them realise that you used to have to push a button, like a physical button, on a mobile phone, and you could only speak for 2 minutes before you'd run out of money because, you know, like the cost of a call was so much. You could send a text message with 160 characters.
My YouTube took 20 seconds of like buffering yesterday.
Yep.
I almost lost my mind. I'm like, how did I deal with dial-up internet? Oh, this is ridiculous.
So like all of those things. And then the problem is when schools, and again, it comes down, you know, there's a bit of a funding issue. It's very expensive to deck out schools with good technology. Teachers try to use technology, it doesn't work. So then you're trying to get someone who wants to engage these kids on systems that don't actually work. So then the kids become more disengaged. The classroom behaviour escalates because now the teacher's trying to figure out how to switch to HDMI input, you know, like...
I laugh at that. So where you have like a computer lab and you have to get new computers.
Yeah.
But then you got to train the teachers to then like look after those computers as students are on it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, this just gets out of control. Like, it's just, you need the resources, but then you train students how to use it. You train teachers how to make sure they're taking control over the classroom.
And if you can get technology in the classroom, like again, my teaching's a little bit different these days than it was in the classroom.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get the kids to do, they're on their phones anyway. We might as well get them to do a Kahoot or an online quiz or, you know, something that's live. You can see the names. It's a bit more, it's like a brain break. It's a bit more interactive.
Yeah.
And then you go back to your lesson because kids need to learn. They need to learn. They're not going to learn through a phone. They need to learn content through a teacher or someone. But you just got to adapt. You got to try new things. It might work. It might suck, you know, but lots of teachers are scared because from the top down, it's, we're having an hour-long lesson. You have to do an hour's worth of learning.
I'm going to lecture for at least half of that, and it's going to be inspiring, and you're all going to listen. You know, it doesn't happen like that.
No, so like if you want to decrease classroom behaviour, you sort of need to increase expectations, but make them fair expectations that the kids can achieve. Not an expectation is you stay in class for an hour. I don't know about you, but I can't stay still for an hour. It's killing me sitting down right now.
You've come a long way, man. It's impressive.
I'm trying not to fidget with stuff, you know, like, but you're trying to tell kids who are addicted to phones and things to do the same thing that adults can't do. You know, so you've got to change it up a little bit.
So a final point on how behaviour has changed. Is it fair to say teachers have changed as well in the last 5, 10, 15 years? I think, I think there's a lot. It might just be the small sample size I'm working with at the moment. There seems to be there's more, because of the teaching shortage, there's more early career teachers coming through. More of those more experienced teachers are now starting to exit out of the career. So there's not as many mentors around. Yep. And sort of those new teachers are trying to find their way, and it's just either sink or swim, and it seems to be most of the time it's sinking, unfortunately.
That, I would say, some of the things that I've noticed is that if you get a good teacher, that good teacher has just as much content knowledge as every other teacher, but what they do is they understand the mental health struggles. They understand, they try to be more inclusive. They try to throw out an umbrella that covers everyone. You know, they're trying, but doing that, it's ridiculously hard. It's exhausting. You need more time to prep.
Yeah.
You need, you know, like it cuts into your own time with your family or your hobbies or whatever you do to unwind. And those teachers burn out. They leave.
Yeah. My thing as a leader is, for my team, I'll do all the, obviously with their feedback, but if I do all the planning and the framework, the biggest value I get from them is them in front of the classroom, building the relationships with the students. So the more I can keep them in front of the classroom and take away from like excess planning and stuff, I think that's the way to do it. But it just seems like it just comes out like everything that happens ends up being the classroom teacher that gets effed over or the students. And like it shouldn't be that way.
You've been doing it for longer than me, but how many times have you seen the same thing wrapped with new words, and it didn't happen the first time, it didn't happen the 9th time, And it's not going to happen the 15th time because it didn't work then. You can change the name, but it's still going to not work now because you're not taking into account the kids who misbehave in class because they're trying to tell you something. All of those systems, EDI, DI, play-based learning, walk alert, all that stuff works really well when the classroom behaves in an appropriate way. But classrooms don't do that anymore.
I think at schools, I can't speak, I haven't been a principal or a deputy principal, but I think if you're so executive team or principals and deputies should have to spend time in the classroom. Now, it might only be one lesson a week or one class a week, but I think it should be in there. And it should be, so if you're an executive, it should be a more difficult class as well. So you can see what's going on.
So
because I find there's a lot of disconnect between, and it might, because people, and it's all, and I haven't been an executive, so I can't talk on what their day-to-day is. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But there needs to be that disconnect between being in the classroom and not being in the classroom. It seems like it's getting bigger and bigger.
It is. And there are some of the primary schools I've worked in and been at, not so much the principal, but the deputies all have a teaching role.
Yeah.
It's not common, but it's becoming more common. So you might have a full-time deputy, but they do...
A point, like a class or a
they
point
do,
two.
Oh, no, they might do a whole day.
Yeah.
Which is point two, sorry, yep. They might do a whole day in a year 5 class.
Yeah.
And then the next week, they might do that for term 1. And then in term 2, they might go to a different class for a term. So they get that...
So what's the average size, off the top of your head, what's the average size of a primary school? 400? 500?
It would be ridiculously hard to say because some...
Yeah. So why aren't they doing it in high schools? Because it automatically came to my mind that just because high schools are larger.
Well, some of the high schools I've been to recently, you're looking at 2,000 kids. So, like, if you pick one class, that sample size is going to be ridiculously small. But then you've also got a lot more administrative issues with high school because they're so big.
Absolutely, that's going to be the trade-off. So when you're teaching in class, you're not doing this.
Yeah, and like they've only got the same amount of time in a day as like we do. You know, like so if you're the behaviour deputy in a primary school and you take out one day to be in the classroom, then who's going to look after all the kids that need your support?
So how does behaviour work in primary school? The teacher
you just yell at them. No.
Jesus, same as high school, mate. Do you send them to the principal's office still a thing? We send them to sit outside the principal's office?
Depends on the school.
The kids go there and do it?
Yeah.
So
sometimes they have like a buddy class, you know, like they have steps before you get sent to admin.
High school, you go to a buddy room and they go on a magical tour and you see them 2 hours later. Oh, where'd you go?
That also happens in primary school, mate. But it happens more in high school because they're just so big.
Well, you must get some teachers just go on, they try to send out like half the class.
Yeah. So, you know, like I was at a school and one teacher sent out 7 kids.
It's one lesson.
They had 19 in the class because as soon as one kid called out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, mate, you're gonna need to tolerate more than just once.
Absolutely. And then there's that awkward conversation when you go as a principal, come back and go, this needs to be done better. Right? What systems you put in place? To
be fair, that teacher did end up on a performance management track.
7 kids out of 8 kids or whatever it was.
Yeah, like it gets a bit much. So, but you know, like that jumping in the class, maybe between recess and lunch, you know, on a Wednesday or something like that.
Yeah,
it does drop that that gap between admin and teachers because admin get all the cool PLs. They're like, try this new system. This system's amazing. Here's all the data to back it up.
Yeah,
but that data comes from it's a skewed view of that data anyway.
I remember. Yeah.
So it's not it's not a fair reflection.
Skewed data. So I was working at one school where I was just filling in because our head of department wasn't there. I was just filling in for the leadership meeting, and the principal had put forward a study that had been done in like some regional place in Norway. And I was working at a school that had no similarities. Everyone's sitting around going, yeah. I'm like, I'll go, it's time to leave this place. Like, nuts.
Same sort of thing. I was at a school and they were pushing for rows and things, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of rows. I like, you know, be together, you know.
So I'm rows all the way.
High school versus primary school. And I was in pre-primary as well.
Yeah.
And a bunch of the research and the data was why these roads were effective were from the 70s. I'm like, mate,
Well,
I get you bringing data to a gunfight, but at least make it in the last 10 years.
well, at least put some thought into your research as well. And go, it's all rapid pace, but it's going to be interesting in the coming years. See what happens.
And I keep on saying, just be nice.
Yeah, that's a
Be
big one,
nice.
isn't it?